the Cabinet meeting on 21st of March 2022. This is the officially the last Cabinet meeting in the 2018 to 2022 administration. So hope you enjoy the last one as much as we've enjoyed all of the others. Just a couple of bits of housekeeping. I'm going to take items 9 and 10 at the beginning. And then items 14 onwards will be taken in private. First of all, so item 1 is apologies. I'm not aware of any apologies. However, there's several members and directors and officers who are joining online. We can see who they are. I won't go through them all, but they're all here. So that can be agreed. Then item 2 is declarations of interest. Does anybody have any any interests to declare? That's a no. Then on to item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of February. Can they be agreed? Okay, no disagreement there, agreed. So we'll move on, as I said, we'll take item, oh, apologies. 7th and the 21st of February, and also the exempt meetings on the 21st of February. They're all agreed, yeah? Fantastic. My apologies. In my rush to get to the item 9 of the home to school travel consultation, I missed out a couple of those. So my apologies. Item 9 is the home to school travel consultation, and the lead member on this is Councillor Stringer.
Thank you very much, Chair. So colleagues may remember that back in November, we came to Cabinet with permission to begin a consultation looking at our policies on home to school or home to college travel assistance, mostly looking at whether our policies were appropriate for the growing number of children and young people, especially education and needs and disabilities. So firstly, I'd like to thank Tom Proctor and colleagues for their really hard work on this, and a particular thank you to all of those who took part in the consultation. We had really excellent engagement with the consultation, both in terms of formal responses and from attendees at webinars and from input from meetings with staff and students at our special schools. I personally attended the webinars that Kids First held. Kids First are Merton's forum for parents of children and young people with disabilities or special needs. It was brilliant to hear about the positive experiences, but also to hear about the frustrations and challenges of families who were directly affected by our transport policies and services. So we wanted to run a consultation because we hadn't reviewed our policies for a number of years and the context was changing substantially, with growing numbers of children being eligible for support and more travelling out of borough for their education. We wanted to have a constructive conversation with families about whether our current policies were appropriate and particularly how it covers children in the early years and learners over the age of 16. What came through really clearly from the consultation was that what parents would most want is for their children to be educated close to home so that the transport options available to them could be as broad as possible. We're completely committed to delivering this and have already expanded our in-borough places, either in special schools or in additionally resource provision in mainstream schools. We've expanded substantially and we'll be delivering many more places in the coming years. We were never consulting on one particular policy change. We wanted a range of views on a range of options, and we've listened carefully to those responses. And as you'll see from the recommendations, we have a clear commitment to supporting the independence and well-being of our young people. And we're not proposing, for example, to start charging for travel assistance like some boroughs do. We particularly heard from families and young people that independent travel training, that is teaching young people how to navigate from place to place using walking and public transport on their own. This travel training can be extraordinarily effective, but it needs investment. So we're proposing an additional £50,000 per year to fund more travel training for our vulnerable children. We also heard that while families thought that personal travel budgets, so providing funding directly to families so they can find their own transport solutions, they thought this was a good idea, but they were not well advertised and they were seen as complicated and hard to use. So we're committing to increasing the promotion and the ease of use of this as an option. The other recommendations, I hope, are clear, that we will support over 16-year-olds to use independent travel wherever possible, because that's what we want for them when they're adults. But we'll obviously continue to provide organised transport where this is impractical. We will ensure the best value for money, working hard to commission transport as effectively as possible. So, Chair, I ask for your support on these recommendations, including recommendation I, that the amendments to the policy documents be delegated to the Director for Children, Schools and Families, Director for Community and Housing, and myself to look at the detail. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer, and I should emphasise our gratitude to officers and parents for their involvement in this report. The lead officer on this is Jane McSherry, who's the Director of Children, Schools and Families. Jane, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Very good. Well, I was obviously pleased to hear that educating children closer to home is very much our priority, and to hear the commitment to promoting personal travel plans for young people. I think that's really, really key, and still that we would be we're keen we're prepared to organise travel for children when is needed. I don't think there are any further questions, so can we agree recommendations A to I? Okay, they're agreed. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 10, which is the extension of the school cleaning contract. And again, the lead member on this is Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. This is a much more straightforward contract extension. So we want to procure for a new school cleaning contract, but we want to do this in line with the school year. So the previous contract that we'd awarded to Julius Rutherford was only for an initial period of 3 years. So that was extended to the end of this month. So we're seeking approval for this to run till the 31st of July 2022, so that it will cover the full school year. And then during that time, we can undertake the procurement of new school cleaning contracts, and obviously we'll be coming back to Cabinet with those decisions when needed. And I'd like to thank Tom Proctor again and Jane McSherry for their work on this, and Murray Davis.
Thank you for that. Very important to get the thanks in for everybody for a lot of hard work that's gone into this. Again, the lead officer on this is Jane McSherry. Jane, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Okay, I can see no questions on this. It's relatively straightforward. So can we agree recommendation A? That's agreed. Thank you very much. So we now move back to the earlier items. I should have said at the outset, Councillor Akugina, who's the lead member on a couple of the items here, has sadly lost her voice. So I'll try my best to introduce her reports. But I'd like to, before I do that, pay my credit to her and her team for the work that's gone into them. So the first of those items is item 4, which is the Merton hate crime strategy. And a great deal of work has gone into this, as the report outlines. And there's been a lot of very useful discussion between the Council and the Hate Crime Strategy Group. And as a result of which, it's been agreed to go forward with the plan and to update the strategy to cover the 2022 to 2026 period. Also, we should say that that the report has been updated to reflect the really extensive public engagement that we went through between last summer as part of the Your Merton process. And I'd like to thank the many thousands of residents who engaged with that. One of the key things that came out of that report was around the need to improve safety for all our communities. And that has very much been incorporated here and will be a key part of our work in the Merton 2030 set of priorities, which we just agreed for the Council. Anyway, the strategy is largely outlined in paragraph 2.15 of the report. It's based around 4 strategic aims: preventing hate crime, protecting the victim and reducing repeat victimization, providing suited support to people who have experienced or are supporting victims of hate crime, and developing and implementing an integrated, robust and coordinated approach to tackling suspected perpetrators. I would like to speak personally and say that, that I feel that, that those objectives have come through very clearly in the report, and I'd like to move that we go to agree recommendations A and B. The lead officer on this is Chris Lee, who's the Director of Environment and Regeneration. Chris, do you want to draw our attention to anything in particular? Have anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair, but either I or Peter Clifton, who's the report author, are happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Peter Clifton, who's the interim head of community safety. May I thank you and your staff for their efforts around this. It's obviously a very important matter to many of us in this room, that we reduce hate crime and that we have a strategy for dealing with it. I don't see any questions on this. Councillor Fraser, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I've been a councillor in this council since 2010, and I've been very impressed with the way we work as a council. Hate crime, regardless of whoever it's against, it's a sad thing, but against women and girls, it has been much more in the forefront. And so I'd like to thank all the officers and the cabinet member who've worked so diligently to make this thing work. It hasn't stopped. The work is just beginning, and we are going to continue to do this until it makes an impact throughout. And so I'm really, really grateful to everyone for the work they've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser, and that sort of moves slightly into the next item as well, which is very useful. But I do appreciate the comments there, and I hope that's been picked up by officers and staff and everybody watching of how important this is to us. There being no other questions, can we agree recommendations A and B for the hate crime strategy? That's agreed. Thank you very much. And then that brings us neatly on to item 5, which is on the strategy towards the safety of women and girls in Merton. Again, with Councillor Akajina's indulgence, I'll try my best to speak on your behalf. I'm sorry if I don't do it as well as you would have done. But this report follows on from obviously the very serious events of last year, and in particular the murder of Sarah Everard by a serving police officer. And the upshot of that was that we had a special council meeting here in Merton last April, at which a motion was agreed where we would undertake work to look into improving the safety of women and girls. And this report arises out of that. One of the things that we did as a result of that was establish a task group, which first met in June 2021. And that task group focused on really 4 areas again. So the first was capturing the activities of the council and its partners that supported the safety of women and girls. Second was considering the wider policy and good practice on responding to the safety of women and girls. Third, identifying how we can engage with and capture the experience of women and girls in Merton. And fourth, identifying further interventions and approach that could enhance our response and any resource implications rising from that. There's quite a lot of significant work that the council has done over the years. One of the most well known about is the Ask for Angela campaign, which was developed here in Merton, which is just a system for women to notify staff if they're in a pub or a nightclub and they feel that they're getting unwanted attention or inappropriate attention. They can ask for Angela behind the bar, and then some support will be put in place for them. A number of other programs, the WAVE program, and also proposals to improve and enhance things like CCTV, which we've been working on over the last year, big sum that's been set aside for that. And obviously we have a task group on the safety of women and girls, which will be meeting from the autumn as well. But I'd like to thank Peter and everybody who's been involved in the drafting of this report. The lead officer once again is Chris Lee. Chris, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Only to say, Chair, that this is a work in progress and there's more work to be done and more work being done, but happy to answer questions, and I'm sure Peter likewise. Thank you.
And again, I'm not aware of any questions coming in, but so it might seem slightly peculiar that I, as leader of the council and the director and the interim head of community safety are all men talking about an issue involving the safety of women and girls in Merton. But I think, as Chris in particular, if you've ever seen his interview, has made it very, very clear. The safety of women and girls is not just a women's issue. It's not just about girls. It's very much an issue for all of us. And I'm very glad that the council takes it seriously. So can we agree recommendations A and B? Thank you very much. They're agreed. Which moves us on to item 6, which is on the CPOs for estate regeneration. And the lead member on this is Councillor Martin Welton, with Councillor Irons and Fraser also available. But Councillor Welton, do you want to lead on this?
Thank you, Chair. I formally move the report and recommendations. As Cabinet colleagues will see, this is an incredibly extensive report, but it builds upon the Cabinet decision made in January 2018 and February 18, and to respectively agree in principle to use compulsory purchase powers to support implementation of the Merton Estates Regeneration Programme. It was noted at that time that further requests would be made to make and serve further CPOs only once the following conditions had been reached. The estate's local plan had been adopted, which has happened. A resolution to grant planning permission has been made for the relevant planning permissions. An outline planning permission has been granted for all the development, and the first stages of High Path and all of Ravensbury has now been granted, with further stages to follow later this year. An approach has been made to all landowners with a view to acquiring the land voluntarily, and voluntary acquisition has not been successful. Also, a statement of reasons setting out the justification of any CPOs has been prepared, and a CPO indemnity agreement has been duly executed between the council and Clarion Housing Group. Obviously, in terms of the indemnification, only the council has the power to issue CPO powers, but clearly we will be recompensed in full by Clarion if we do if those powers are exercised. This has been obviously a regeneration which started back in the summer of 2013, where the council took the supporting principle to support regeneration, which was obviously then subject to the 10 commitments in terms of that regeneration scheme on those 3 estates. The consideration and justification for a CPO, 808 new homes, which will comprise 289 affordable homes, High Pass Phase 2, Eastfields Phase 1 and Ravensbury 3 and 4. The proposed development reinforces the attractiveness of the estate as a vibrant and balanced community, but also as well increase the supply of high quality housing, creating an attractive living environment in the area and providing better quality, affordable homes. At the end of February 2022, Clarion had already acquired 229 freeholds and long leases across the Merton Estates regeneration area through voluntary sales under their 2015 residence offers. These consist of 130 freehold and leasehold interests at High Path, 88 at Eastfields and 11 at Ravensbury. Many of these homes have subsequently been reused in terms of temporary housing, allowing people to be housed in the borough and increasing the supply. But there is obviously still homes outstanding that do need to be purchased. Within Eastfields Phase 1, there is 33 freeholds and 14 long leases, which will need to be acquired. Within High Path Phase 2 and 3, 18 freeholds and 29 long leases. And the remaining stages of Ravensbury, 3 freeholds and 1 long leases. Although a large number of the acquisitions have been completed or in the process of being completed, it is clear that despite the significant efforts to get the acquisition by agreement of all the land which is required to facilitate regeneration, these additional homes will be needed if the regeneration is to be delivered as quickly as possible. If the council was not to use its CPO powers, the regeneration would take a lot longer in terms of delivery, and actually there would be barriers in terms of its viability. These powers are actually crucial in terms of being exercised, but we obviously do hope that people voluntarily sell their homes without having a CPO to be issued. If we don't have to exercise CPOs, it will expedite the developments on these estates, but these are a power to ensure that the regeneration is facilitated. We believe it is the best solution for these 3 estates of Ravensbury, High Path and Eastfields, and I ask that Cabinet approve this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And once again, the lead officer on this is Chris Lee, Director of Environment and Regeneration. Chris, would you like to add anything?
Nothing to add, Chair. I know that James McGinley and Tara Butler, who've been deeply involved in this matter, along with Louise, are all happy to answer any questions that we might have.
Thank you, and yes, very important to thank Tara, James, and everybody who's been involved on this this very big and an important regeneration project. There are no questions. Obviously, you know, we hope that these powers are not needed. We feel there's a good offer in place for those who are involved, and it will obviously be a faster process and fairer to the whole community as well, and overall with huge advantages for the whole community if we can go ahead without needing to do CPO. And the report itself is only really necessary as a move to ensure that people do have decent homes on these estates, or do move into new homes that they deserve to live in, good quality new homes, and also that many new families will be able to enjoy good quality housing and affordable housing in the future. Can we agree the recommendations A to F? They're agreed. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 7, which is on the scrutiny task group's report into repurposing the high street, and leading on that, at his last official meeting of the council, I think. So I'd like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to Councillor Peter Southgate, who's been a really important councillor over many years, and has, goodness me, what a hard job being chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission for, you know, I was in short trousers when you started, Peter. So thank you for the time and effort that you've put into it. And please, if you want to introduce this report, we'd much appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Well, you know, thank you for that fulsome tribute. I appreciate it. And in one sense, best till last. I mean, this report has been quite a time in coming. We put the task group together in the summer of 2020. But since then, other initiatives, other things have come along. In particular, the Ormerton project at considerable scale, and Future Merton also have been undertaking projects that had the capital funding for improvements to our high streets, and all these things really are moving in the same direction. They are recognising the importance of our high streets. They are acknowledging their changed role as a result of the pandemic. In a sense, you could say that the pandemic has triggered that realization that our high streets already were in decline and something needed to be done. But now we, I think, identify that people value them more as community hubs, would like to see them more as meeting places, more about socializing, less about shopping. And there are a number of specific recommendations in the report relating to the green agenda, if you like, trying to find ways of linking our wonderful parks. Morden, a good example there, you know, great park at either side, into the high streets and greening up the high street more. Recognizing the value of arts and cultural events, for example, the theatre quarter in Wimbledon. We do see a role for town centre managers to be the council's link to the businesses. We also recognise that there would be value in a digital offer, and it is good to know that Future Merton are already working on this. And the one other aspect worth mentioning, the importance of attracting entrepreneurs, providing space for small businesses who may well have decided they're going to work from home more in future and commute less to establish premises. We're particularly impressed with the work of Wimbletech in this regard. And the final point I'd make is that, I mean, these are recommendations you perhaps could make about any and every high street, but every high street has its unique history, and it's that identity through its history really that is, we think, the USP that will help to shape and provide its identity, the thing that keeps people coming back and in fact feeling proud of their high street. So to take this forward, we do recognise there will need to be quite a lot of detail work done by officers. There is, as recommended, the need for an action plan to be drafted by officers to bring specific proposals forward for each high street. So if I can thank the cabinet member for a very supportive response thus far. I am very relieved to have got it into the life of this council, Chair. So thank you for the opportunity to bring it to you tonight. And if I can thank to the scrutiny team in particular, Stella Ackington for her work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Southgate. And as this is your last meeting, don't tell anybody else at future cabinet meetings, but you went over your time, but I didn't want to interrupt you. However, I will not necessarily be as tolerant as future contributors at cabinet. Good luck to you and thank you for the report. The lead member from our side on this is Councillor Owen Pritchard. Owen, would you like to respond on this?
Yeah. Ooh. Thank you. First off, I want to say thank you. I have obviously been a cabinet member with you as chair, but also I've worked on a committee with you as chair, and indeed I've chaired a task group with you on it. And over the last 4 years, I've got to know you well, and I thank you for your dedication to public service and the people and residents of Merton, and I mean that wholeheartedly. You are public spirited in the best sense of the word or the phrase, so thank you very much. I agree with you on this the key issues here, which I think are the importance of our high streets and the way that we have for too long tolerated their decline. I also agree with you on what I think are really sort of 5 key points, which is the importance of place, right? The need for us to intervene in the place. The role of the place in how we as a society interact with one another, the need for a pleasant environment for that interaction, and indeed the sort of the role of society and how we socialize has been critical to how we operate as a community. And I think those things, actually, though they seem self-evidently obvious now, have not always been thus, actually. The role of intervention, the role of the place, the role of society, the acceptance that we help shape that society. And I think we've come a long way in re-realizing that we do have that role. So I thank you for reminding us of that. And it is in keeping with the work that we did last year with your Merton and an increasing re-emergence of it. I hope that the work that you've done and specifically the recommendations will help inform some of the platform of the various parties standing when they go forward. I know my early reading of it helped inform any contribution I made to our platform, so I thank you for that. And I hope and I'm confident that any future administration will draw from it because there are recommendations there of real substance and value, and I know that I've already chatted with James. I suppose on a final point, it'd be, I don't want to miss this, is that there is something bigger than we can do. And that's, it is worth mentioning though, that people do realize is that if we are really to tackle high streets and the high streets issue going forward, not just in Merton, but around the country, we do really need to look at the business rates issue, right? That's a national issue, but it is one that is core. So if there is anyone watching or anyone who has a hotline to the MP for Wimbledon, and if he has a hotline, the emergence, I'm looking at you up there, Nick, in the screen, we do need to adjust business rates and think forward now and think that how we do this in the future and where we have transaction rates for people who sell online to in some way subsidize the rebirth of high streets. I think that's something that we can all get behind. So thank you again for your work and thank you again for this report.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And yes, obviously, as an administration, we're just terribly proud of our high streets and local communities, and the importance of the high streets has really shone through over the last couple of years, when many of us have been sort of like tied down in their homes, or pretty much very much within their local communities. And so this piece of work is extremely timely. And gives us a lot of pause for thought as we look to the future. I'd like to thank both of you, Councillor Southgate and Pritchard, for your commitment over many years to tackling this issue. Can we agree the recommendations A and B? Thank you very much. That's agreed. And then we'll move on to item 8, which is the awarding of an agreement for the provision and maintenance of a community equipment service via an integrated procurement hub. And the lead member on this is Councillor Rebecca Lanning.
Thank you, Chair. This is hopefully a fairly straightforward and pragmatic report. Thanks in full to Keith Burns, our Assistant Director in Community and Housing. In terms of the report content, as colleagues will be aware, we have a statutory duty to provide community equipment to support disabled and vulnerable older people in their homes, with the aim of which is to help them live independently, which is also a core ambition for this council for all of our residents. So the equipment this report refers to largely includes items such as commodes, perching stools and hoists. So one of the most important benchmarking indicators for us was going to be value for money. On assessment, our recommended provider is the London Borough of Croydon via an integrated procurement hub, which was not only the most competitively priced, they also provide a more efficient service and, as the report details, a number of other additional benefits. But colleagues will also note that to guard against any risks, we're also undertaking a robust mitigation plan. So we'll be awarding the agreement on a rolling basis with the ability to withdraw by giving not less than 6 months notice, as well as undertaking a value for money exercise every 3 years. The lead officer, John Morgan, is having a very well-deserved break, but I know Keith Burns, who's led on this report, is in the chamber and may wish to add to my points. So, Chair, if you don't mind, I'll hand over to Keith.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lang, for that excellent report. Keith Burns is the lead officer in the room as the Assistant Director here on behalf of John Morgan, the Interim Director of Community and Housing. Keith, would you like to add anything or draw anything to our attention?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I need to add anything to what Councillor Lanning has said.
Well, if I can just convey again, I know that Councillor Lanning already has done our gratitude to you and your team for the thought and effort that's gone into this report, and really to your commitment to the service users as well really shines through throughout, and it's something that we're very proud of in Merton, that we do look after our clients extremely well. So thank you for that. Can we agree the recommendations A to C? Agreed. That's agreed. Thank you very much. So, having done items 9 and 10 already, we will move on to the financial monitoring report, which is the lead member on this is Councillor Pritchard again.
So thank you for officers for pulling this report together. Effectively, it's the post-period 10 report that's projecting a 6.5 million outward variance. So that's a third of a million less at the end of period 9. I just want to mention 5 things, I suppose. First off is this is only after period 10, so we have 2 more months yet in which to see this. This doesn't include any settlement on in-year DSG funding, so we expect that if it is forthcoming within the next month or so to alter what in-year accounts look like. It needs to be seen in the context of an £8 million underspend last year. We said at the time that many of the costs that came with the public health crisis would have delayed impacts. And that has been proved to be true. And then fourthly, last year we used that 8 million to replenish reserves, both the general reserves, but also the balance in the budget reserve. That has been proven to be the correct decision. Again, I do know that some people were telling us to spend that at the time, but it has been because what we're doing is balancing into year, and we can use those reserves for any overspend this year. And finally, I just want to make this point, because I did hear 1 or 2 people remark on it last month, is that on the accuracy of financial forecasting for what is a £570 million a year organisation or thereabouts. Much of what we do is demand led. Much of what we do varies hugely dependent on circumstances that are beyond our control. What we're getting when we're getting it to within these margins of about 5 million or 1% margins, that should be applauded. And the way that we manage that year on year by using in-year underspend to replenish supplies, to use balance in the budget reserves is a good way of doing things. So I thank the financial team once again for taking this approach and ensuring that we have stability year on year in the way that they approach the finances. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Pritchard. And having done the having fulfilled the role of Cabinet Member for Finance for almost as long as Councillor Southgate has been the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, can I say my immense gratitude to you and to the team that every year produces these financial monitoring reports, which are extremely helpful pieces of work to the good running of the council. Caroline Holland, who's the Director of Corporate Services, is not here tonight. I believe that Ellis Kelly, is that correct? You're here to add anything and to show us up for not knowing anywhere near as much as you and your team do. Do you have anything you'd like to add to Councillor Pritchard's opening remarks?
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing to add to the summary. Just on the point of accuracy of reporting, just a reminder that when we do our outturn report in a few months' time, that will have our normal sort of analysis on accuracy throughout the year and how we can improve going forward. So we'll always be reviewing that.
Oh, that's brilliant. We do appreciate very much the work that you do, and thank you, Alice. And if you can pass that on to your colleagues, that would be much appreciated as well.
Thank you.
In the meeting, can we agree recommendations A and B? They are agreed. Excellent. Okay, so then we'll move on to item 12, which is a verbal update, and it's on selective licensing and empty homes. And the lead member on this is Councillor Martin Wilton.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give obviously a brief update to Cabinet in terms of ongoing work which is happening in terms of a potential selective licensing scheme which would require a licence for private rented housing and houses in multiple occupation, and work into an Article 4 direction that would require use small homes and flat shares to seek planning permission if they are HMOs of 6 people or more. As Cabinet colleagues are aware, the number of HMO conversions has been a considerable concern to many members in this council over the past few years. We've obviously seen the number growing quite considerably. Some of these have been allowed under permitted development, so there is no recourse to the planning system in terms of allowing these homes to be converted. This is of concern to many local residents in the borough. So obviously as Cabinet member, I have asked for further work to be undertaken to see whether we can bring in an Article 4 within Merton and to undertake research into this area. Similarly, in terms of houses of multiple occupation, we have seen councils introduce selective landlord licensing schemes across the country, which is obviously to improve the conditions of private sector tenants, but also as well to improve the quality of those homes. To introduce any kind of HMO and selective licensing, it will require building up an evidential base. There has been recent cases in London Borough of Croydon where the evidential base was not strong enough, and its selective landlord licensing scheme and Article 4 for continuation did not get approved. In an ideal world, this would be automatic and these powers would be statutory. For HMOs at the moment, it's either 5 or more people within a household, or 3 tenants of more than one household, or houses of 3 or more stories. I personally think we could go the whole way in terms of government, but we only can use the powers that we have actually available to us in terms of looking at the introduction of selective licensing. So in terms of both selective licensing and Article 4, we are developing licensing viability modelling, including cost modelling. We expect that work to be completed in the summer, and following this review of the cost modelling and viability assessments, for Cabinet then to consider a report on this matter. Similarly, in terms of Article 4, a number of stages of work are needed to consider the feasibility of introducing an Article 4 direction. We hope that a further report then is presented to Cabinet in July, but obviously it will require background work to be undertaken. And the other thing in relation to any scheme for selective landlord licensing is to use the data we have available in terms of actually building the case. This work will be crucial, and this work will be undertaken. So I would like to take this opportunity of thanking officers both in community and housing and environment and regeneration for the work which has been undertaken to date. It clearly will be quite a substantial amount of work going forward, but it is my view as Cabinet member that this work is crucial, and for decisions to be then taken about whether we introduce a selective landlord licensing scheme or Article 4, but it has to be on a strong basis. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. The lead officer on this is Chris Lee, the Director of Environment and Regeneration. Is there anything that you'd like to add to this, Chris?
Nothing to add, Chair. Officers are working at pace to ensure that we bring this forward as early as possible.
Fantastic. I had a question, or have a question in the room from Councillor Brenda Fraser.
Thank you, Chair. This is a bugbear of mine, HMOs, because in fact, in Longthornton has the second largest amount of HMOs. And the residents are very unhappy about the whole situation because it covers everything. It affects all the fly tipping, it affects everything that we could possibly think of. And what I'd like to know is why has it taken so long for the process just mentioned to be implemented? Because we really need an answer soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser, for your question. It's important that we do have the evidence to build in terms of the case. I think it's extremely regrettable that the permitted development rules were considerably relaxed about 10 years ago when Eric Pickles was Secretary of State. I believe that this actually was a retrograde step, but ultimately we do need to have that evidence base built because the Secretary of State can veto any Article 4 direction. So it needs to be on a firm footing. I do share her concerns as well. You have many residents certainly in my ward, which is adjoining Longthornton, who have concerns about HMOs and the ability for them to actually go through on the nod without any recourse to the planning committee. It doesn't necessarily say that those HMOs won't happen, but at least there'll be that element of democratic control. You know, if an Article 4 was in place where the planning committee could determine the application for HMO rather than the case at the moment where it just goes through automatically and there's nothing we can do provided it's permitted development.
Thank you for that, Councillor Welton. Very clearly, improving conditions in the private rented sectors are a big social priority for all of us in the administration, as Councillor Fraser's highlighted, and you have as well. And it was something that emerged through your Merton as a priority of residents, and that's why it is a priority now for the council in our new set of priorities, Merton 2030. Obviously, I would say this, but I wish it was a bit more of a government priority as well. The government were as committed to improving conditions in the private rented sector as we are. It's an issue that does affect the whole country, doesn't just affect us. But where it does affect us, we'll aim to work on it. And it's clear that we are doing our best to help residents in those conditions, despite not necessarily being able to rely on the government to help us with that, to take action. So I'd like to thank Councillor Welton and officers. Clearly, we agreed motions on this back in November. I think it's really helpful that we've had this update now to demonstrate that real progress towards moving towards what our ultimate ambition is being achieved, and long may your work on this continue. So thank you very much. Can we note the verbal report? I think that's all we're being asked of tonight. Thank you very much. Then unfortunately, we need to move into private session. I'll just see if I can find the correct wording. But can we resolve that the public are excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following reports on the grounds that they are exempt from disclosure for the reasons stated in the reports? Can that be agreed?